morality appeared to be getting installed in our society. And it went something like this. And again, one can regret this or admire it, but I think most people will recognize something like it. That not very long ago, if you wanted to be seen to be an ethical or good person, there were certain things that were perhaps expected of you. Broadly speaking, they were the inheritance of the Judeo-Christian tradition. And this included things like charity, forgiveness, virtue as understood in that tradition, and a lot more. And then at some point in the last 15 years, I say sped up very clearly in the last 10 years and then weaponized in the last 5. We see this another form of morality, not totally dissimilar in some of its appearances. And that is that in order to be a good person, to be seen as a good person in a society like Australia or Britain, you would need to stress, for instance, that you were anti-racist, as if everybody else in society was profoundly racist and you were one of the few brave souls willing still to battle racism. You would need to present yourself as being entirely on the side of women in any and all circumstances and really talk about it an awful lot. You know, if you're a man, stress your feminist credentials, a tendency which, as you know from reading The Madness of Crowds, I'm intensely skeptical of. You needed to talk about LGBT all the time, or at least as often as possible. And these, as well as a few other things, you might add in green and perhaps a couple of other things, became what you stress in order to show that you're a good person. Now, these in the end, I started to realize, were becoming load-bearing walls, which I became very worried about, and am very worried about, because they can't bear the load. My view is that LGBT rights, equal rights for women, equal rights for people, whatever their racial origin, is a very desirable endpoint. But it's an endpoint of liberalism in the good sense, as we might understand it. It's a hideous foundation. Why? For 2 reasons in particular. The first is that all of these bases for a new morality have intense friction among themselves. So, as I point out in the trans chapter, trans and women have intense friction as rights claims for reasons I explain. Trans and gay have intense friction between them for reasons I go into in The Madness of Crowds. But there's a second reason as well, which is that all of these things that we have been in societies like Australia trying to base our morality on are themselves much more unstable components than we've been willing to admit. So I say in the gay chapter at the outset, and I do gay at the outset partly because it's the only one of these minority things I can claim to have any crampons on the wall of the important Everest of liberal rights. Gay is much more unstable than we're willing to admit in our societies. We still don't know very much about it. I think we have to be a bit more humble about some of the issues around it as a result of that. But I get on then to the women chapter, and I say, this one also is much more unstable than we're willing to admit. Are women and men exactly equal? Are men more competent than women in certain areas? Are women more competent than men in certain areas? Or have we, just for convenience for the time being, landed, for instance, in this strange place I think we're in, where we have to pretend that women are exactly the same as men and also magically better? We're very uncertain about this. We tend to be totally certain. We're very uncertain. Race, absolute mess, which we've been trying to think about and deal with as well as we can, but there's a whole load of hell waiting for us if we keep leaning on it this hard. And then trans, which we know almost nothing about, and our societies are pretending to be incredibly certain about. And if I can sum up the problem in this in a sentence, it is that this new morality we're trying to construct relies on us pretending we know about things that we don't know about.